This morning, the session is promoting good health and well-being, and the title of this presentation is Sexwise as a Model for School-Based Sexual Health Promotion, A Journey for Success. And our speakers today are Evelyn, Mann and Gareth, McMillan. Evelyn is passionate about applied theatre and the field of sexual and reproductive health. She's a teacher with a postgrad diploma in drama and education. Evelyn works for THETA, the Theatre and Health Education Trust, as the artistic director and is responsible for the theatre and education program Sexwise. Evelyn has been working with Sexwise for 4 years now and developing the program to actively involve participants in an engaging and motivating way. Gareth holds a BA majoring in theatre studies and a diploma in performance. He is an experienced actor, director, writer and producer who first worked for theatre back in 1997. After managing art venues in Auckland, Wellington and London, Gareth returned to Dunedin and began administrating for theatre in 2006. So welcome Evelyn and Gareth.
Talo Falava, nau mai, haere mai, tauti mai, kia ora tātou katoa, ko Gareth taku ingoa. Evelyn and I work for THETA, the Theatre and Health Education Trust. I am the Trust Administrator, and I work very closely with Evelyn, who is our Artistic Director. My history with theatre began a million years ago in 1997, when I was employed as an actor educator for PIST, which was a youth program addressing youth alcohol issues. But our journey today begins in 2011, when Evelyn was appointed to the artistic director role and tasked with transitioning the Sexwise pedagogy. While Sexwise was founded on best practice health promotion, we used a traditional theatre and education approach. Evelyn brought her vast experience of applied theatre to the work. Applied theatre is not message-based. We provide an engaging, thought-provoking program that encourages and supports our rangatahi youth to talk about sexual health, relationships, and the development of sexuality. We are part of the continuum that connects young people to where they need to be, increasing their opportunities to get new knowledge, and to discuss the range of issues and choices that sit around sexual and reproductive health. Evelyn describes me as the challenger of her ideas and beliefs, co-conspirator, confident, colleague who shares the tears and the laughter. But I'm just happy to be known as Evelyn's sidekick. Together, we're going to share with you the journey of Sexwise, beginning with the underlying theory of applied theatre to its praxis in sexual and reproductive health promotion context. How we are contributing to better outcomes for youth and what we think we need to know next. Sexwise, a model for school-based sexual health promotion, journey for success. The prologue to our journey begins in 1989. This is the year in which the Berlin Wall tumbled, the first text message was sent, and the Otago Area Health Board's Health Promotion Service commissioned a theatre-based safer sex program for 16 to 18-year-old students. The Say No or Joe show toured 30 secondary schools in Otago and Southland. Program evaluation made it clear that theatre and education could be complementary to comprehensive and long-term health education within schools and be supported by health promotion agencies. THETA was formally established in 1991, and while we have delivered other programs, a sexual health program has been the cornerstone of our activities ever since. Over time, the program has been known as Sex Matters, Sexwise, spelt W-H-Y-S, and finally Sexwise, as in wisdom. In 2011, Evelyn was appointed Artistic Director, and I'll now hand over to her to explain the new approach that she brought to Te Mahi.
Kia ora. I just want to refer back to the kahikatea tree, We choose that waiata because we believe we are, along with you, part of the forest that supports our young people to grow tall like the kahikatea tree. I believe in ako, about learning and teaching in a reciprocal way, about working in the spirit of kotahitanga, in cooperation and collaboration. I also believe in taking responsibility for one's own learning and developing emotional wisdom. In talking about the nature of working in drama, O'Connor, Holland and O'Connor, big mouthful, talk about students making this type of making connections within this type of work. And when I talk about this type of work, I talk about working inside drama for learning, that demonstrated their common sense knowledge of their emotional world, or we call it emotional wisdom. They describe how there's a tendency for students to turn off when they're given messages, but if we can set up a space for the use of emotional wisdom, then they take off. We in Sexwise have experienced our young people working with that emotional wisdom.
Sex is when two people want to have sex. Rape is when one person forces another person to have sex with them.
Overconfidence is when you think you're better than everyone else. Oh, confidence is when you have faith in yourself.
Sex for the first time should be magical, special, no regrets.
He should be proud he's a virgin in 2014.
Put yourself first sometimes. Your sexuality doesn't define who you are.
If you have sex with someone who doesn't like it, is it the same? We're going to begin our journey into Sexwise by considering dramatic play in childhood. The first thing I need you to do now is turn to someone near to you and have a quick kōrero about when you played as a child. And specifically, I want you to look at those times when you played pretending to be someone else. So you were in role as someone else. Now, and if you can't remember one of those for yourself, I'm sure that you've seen children at play pretending to be someone else. Now, you've got 2 minutes. So in pairs, that's two sides of the argument. Each of you must talk. Go. Whakarongo mai, titero mai. I have to get you back, or we'll never get to the end. Can I just say, it absolutely warms my heart when everybody starts yapping away flat out, because it means you know what I'm talking about. And for many of you, I think back to my young days, and I'm sure there's lots of people in this room that used to do concerts for their parents. That was one of the earlier forms of dramatic play that I remember. So now you have to ask yourself, what the heck has this got to do with Sexwise? I'm going to explain by telling you a story from my own childhood to begin the journey. Ko aura ki tōku maunga, ko waitaki tōku awa, ko Ngāti Pakiha tōku iwi. Ko McGimpsey me Mann o Kuhapu, ko te whānau I koa o Mann. Ko Wilma Raua, ko Jim o Kumātua. Ko Hurau tōku kainga, better known in the south as Kūrau. As I say these words, I'm transported back to my childhood in the Waitaki Valley. I have wonderful memories of a childhood that was filled with imaginative play, fostered and nurtured by loving parents. And we soon became masters of our own games, driven by a thirst for knowing and understanding. Games that went on for days and even weeks as we got older. It was these games that brings to me my first really powerful conscious recognition of learning. We were playing refugees. I'm not sure why. I suspect that something was on the news, and you had to be quiet in our house in the morning at breakfast and at night around dinner time, because my parents listened to the news on the radio. And I suspect that there had been talk about an event at the time, but I don't know what the event was, but I know it had impacted on me as a child. So this day, with a group of children from the nearby Waitaki Hydro village, we set off up the hill. We were on the farm where I lived, and the age range in the group of children was probably about 8 to 12. There would have been 6 or 8 of us. I can't remember exactly how many that day because it was an ongoing game. This particular game, drama, or it is a drama, but we called it a game, came after hospitals, after dental nurses, but just before circuses. These were all games created by us and driven by a need to know or understand something about the world we live in. You know, for circuses, it was after you've hung with your gumboots on off a half-inch pipe above the wood pile, and you get down and you go. It's about that feeling of mastering something and sharing it with others. I think we might call this taking some responsibility for our own learning. Over several weekends, we'd carted a lot of rubbish up the hill to the gully where we created what I might call now a set. It was a hideout for refugee children, a safe place where they were responsible for their own lives but always aware of danger. We had huts, buckets for carting water from the creek. We used a big rock for a table and log rounds for seats. There were tins for mugs and plates and spoons made out of bark and sticks. On this particular day, we were enrolled as refugees and very deeply involved in the game. As we played, the local top dressing plane flew overhead. We all knew the plane, we all knew the pilot, but so engrossed in the game were we, deeply inside an imagined world, that suddenly, and I'll never forget the cry, "Spotter planes! We'll all die!" Within seconds, everyone was hidden. I lay under a mitagari bush, terrified. I knew where I was and who I was, but in those moments I was living deeply in the imagined world of someone else. The impact was enormous. I was curled up in a ball. Tears streamed down my face and I trembled in fear. I remember thinking, I don't ever want to be a refugee. It's too hard. But here I am, and there is no choice. Once the plane had vanished from sight, one by one we cautiously emerged from hiding. Eyes turned skyward, searching for the plane. The discussion that followed went like this. Did the plane see any of us? Have we given ourselves away by making huts and organising places to eat? We've made ourselves visible. We never thought about it. Will the plane come back? If it doesn't, and people come overland, where will they come from? How long will it take? Will they come at all? Do we need to pack up and move now? If we do, where will we go, and how will we know where to go? And finally, what will they do with us if they find us? Although I knew where I was and that I was perfectly safe, I experienced the feelings of someone else, somewhere else. A very powerful learning moment about being a refugee, and it wasn't a nice feeling or comfortable at all, but it was an enormous emotional response nonetheless. But at the same time, The learning both excited and motivated me to get on with the game. You know, it's really cool. Many drama learning theorists and practitioners have written about these moments. This powerful moment is what Boal calls metaxis, the state of belonging completely and simultaneously to two different autonomous worlds, the image of reality and the reality of the image. Peter O'Connor acknowledges this, but first quotes Vygotsky and Bolton. Vygotsky would say, in drama, participants are able to simultaneously weep as the patient and revel as the player. Bolton saw the dual effect as the tension that exists between the concrete world and the as-if world, and that sometimes it leads to contradictory emotions. Peter O'Connor talks about the dual effect being possible because a participant in drama simultaneously experiences and empathises with the role they are playing, and as themselves they're able to enjoy and analyse the emotion. This is Dorothy Heathcote. Dorothy passed away not terribly long ago. Dorothy Heathcote is our leader. Dorothy Heathcote made huge changes in drama and education that have had a massive impact on drama practitioners throughout the world. Nicholson quotes her as describing the moment as a stumbled-on moment of authenticity. I have never forgotten that particular moment, and many others that I experienced in my childhood. I now, as a nearly old lady, understand much more about the extent of this type of learning experience. And I now know that this kind of play, in the pretend, in the as-if, in the imagined world, when it's carefully structured and planned in learning settings, can provide participants with powerful learning. I know when I get those moments too, because somebody puts up their hand and they're looking like this. And you say, yes? Is this real? It speaks for itself, doesn't it really? Right, now you've got 2 minutes to return to the person that you shared the first story about pretend play with, and I want you to just try and identify the kinds of things you were learning. Play is learning. There's always something going on. So 1 minute each to see if you can identify what that learning was about. Go. Whakarongo mai, titiro mai. Learning is and should be an exciting thing, and I hear the excitement in your voices as you talk about it. There's lots of ways of looking at learning, and stories are good. I use my story to provide an example of a powerful learning experience, and now many years later, with considerable input from my teacher training, experience in the classroom, and my work in applied theatre, I understand the most important features that underpin the way I learned as a child, and indeed I still do today. The most significant, of course, is dramatic play. Young children have an innate ability to carry out this type of play, just as a kitten practices hunting, chasing a ball of string. Dramatic play brings with it power and control over learning. Participants are actively involved in cooperative story building and development. The active involvement of participants increases the number of perspectives that are brought in. Better than the teacher just choosing what you should know. It increases the number of concepts that are likely to be explored. And beneath it all is questioning, whether it's unconsciously or consciously, that questioning is pivotal to driving the learning through the story. Us After several years of being a theatre trustee, I became the artistic director. It was time to bring all I knew about learning to bear on something really important, Sexwise. I was asked to move to an applied theatre model of theatre and education. Now, this meant developing the existing work by involving participants in drama, in role, within a story, and they are secondary level students at that, and they don't all like drama. So, I brought to this work my experience as a teacher who used drama in the classroom, and I am a trained primary teacher, not a trained secondary teacher. And I brought with it my experience over 6 years as an active facilitator in ATCO, the Applied Theatre Consultants' Everyday Theatre. Everyday Theatre is a theatre and education program that began in New Zealand in 2004, touring mostly in the North Island, working with intermediate age students. It provides, through drama, and it continues to do today, a safe forum to discuss family relationships in response to our high statistics for child abuse and family violence. I acknowledge the huge influence of Dr. Peter O'Connor in the team. He's the one in the blue t-shirt, and we call him Doc. I'm Southern Man. The bloke on the other end is Terminator Tainui, and Peter's wife is the fourth team member. And right now her name doesn't spring to mind as a player. I acknowledge Peter as having a huge influence on my life as a person, a teacher and a drama practitioner. Peter is responsible for Everyday Theatre, and also the United Nations project in Christchurch post-earthquake using drama to restore dreams for children was called A Teaspoon of Light. Check it out on YouTube. So I arrived at Sexwise knowing how Everyday Theatre worked. I'd experienced 8 years living on the road out of a suitcase 20-something weeks of every year. I'd experienced young people's eager participation, moments of deep understanding, and an enjoyment in the process. Learning was child-centred, activity-based, building cooperative narratives in an imagined world that involved real problems of child abuse and family violence. So with this understanding in applied theatre, I moved across to Sexwise. Boal, along with many other drama and education theorists and practitioners, follows Freire's theories, and I don't know if I say that right, and I've asked a whole lot of people and they all say it different. Freire is what you get. Freire's theories of learning and teaching. Freire criticised what he called banking education as a model where adults decide what students need to know, take the empty jugs and fill them up. He would say that this model describes the learner as a spectator rather than the recreator of the world. Early models of theatre and education would fit the banking model as they strove to bring knowledge and understanding through story to an audience. Theatre and education has undergone massive shifts and changes as theorists and practitioners work together to constantly question and examine what they do, and they've created and recreated the use of drama as a vehicle for learning. Sexwise aspires to Freire's alternative to the banking model. Rather than have students passively receive knowledge decided on by teachers, education should involve inquiry, problems posed that bring about dialogue. And this dialogue between learners and teachers brings with it responsibility for intellectual and personal growth. Those involved become co-investigators in building awareness. It's about motivating learners to learn. It's about getting them to take some responsibility for the direction and the depth of learning, and along with others work on it, just like any other problem you have to solve. So what is applied theatre? It isn't a particular thing or structure. It's an umbrella term that's used for a group of performance practices in which artists work with individuals and communities to foster social change. This work is undertaken in an immense variety of spaces that aren't usually defined as theatre spaces. The people involved may or may not be skilled in theatre, but have a vested interest in the issue addressed by the work. Under the umbrella of applied theatre, you'll find theatre for development, drama and education, theatre and education, prison theatre, community theatre, playback theatre, psychodrama, and theatre and conflict resolution. So it morphs in a multitude of ways, which I'd have to be honest here and say about people are starting to question hugely already. There were and still are two parts to Sexwise: the performance that introduces the characters, sets the scene and the issues, and then the workshop. In the first year, I set out to move Sexwise, developing a story-based performance that prepared the audience group for a role that would work directly with the characters in the second part of the program. The audience group would meet the characters, question them about the issues they were facing and give advice. Their role would be one of helper or advisor, thus empowering them to use their emotional wisdom to be the ones who knew. Power and agency, eh? The story was devised by the actor facilitators and introduced the issues. Through questioning of characters, the participants brought up those issues they wanted to discuss. This meant the work wasn't neat packages of information delivered directly about everything, but participants took responsibility for where in sexuality education they would go according to need or interest, things that fitted their lives at the time. Each character had focus issues, and as they formed relationships within the story, issues were highlighted. For example, beginning relationships, homophobia, alcohol and sex, consent, and many more things now. There were 3 active facilitators in each Sexwise team, 2 young men and a woman in one, 2 young women and a man in the other. As part of the rehearsal process, the active facilitators were involved in learning with various agencies to ensure that they were carrying information that was up to date and reliable and just ready to use when it was needed. Agencies such as Family Planning, Sexual Health Clinic, health teachers for curriculum knowledge and understanding, the sexual health promoter from the DHB, and our lovely Neil here from Queer Support would come in and spend time with the teens. By 2012, the next step was to frame the participants' role more strongly, to distance them more from the content and strengthen the acknowledgement of them as thinking sexual beings with knowledge and understanding. Framing is about giving them a role that determines perspective on the event. And so we were much more clear in this year about them being panellists. And we set the panel inside an imaginary world, clearly stated as an imaginary online streaming website where young people's issues were posted in video, and those who entered the site became panellists responsible for providing help and support, empowered as those who know. This framing through role distances the participants from their own stories, providing that a margin of safety. We never use young people's own stories at all. It's in order to create a safe place to question. The frame not only provides the distance and level of safety, but a perspective and some responsibility on the event or the experience being explored. The story was also updated in 2012 and became more complex to reflect the lives of the young people we would work with. It saw us rise to 4 active facilitators in each team to provide more roles within the story, complexities in relationships, life is not simple. Simple messages don't give you answers. It gave a stronger cultural mix to better reflect our participant groups, a better balance of gender, and strength in numbers for working in the workshop situation, because the work is really intense and focused. Once you start, you're going. In one day, it's common for there to be a performance at the beginning of the day, followed by up to 4 workshops. In our large secondary schools, the performance is to the whole group that will come to the workshop during the day in their individual class groups. This is really deliberate because this subject matter is sensitive, and it's easy for participants if they're working with people that they are used to working with in familiar spaces. By 2013, we were retaining active facilitators who were becoming much more skilled at facilitation aspects of the program and developing a much stronger understanding of how this applied theatre model worked. The story gets reworked again, and as well as a general update, the aim was to provide experiences and characters that would ensure that every participant would be able to identify in some way with something. The active facilitators had 2 distinct roles, the first being presenters of the program, the second being the characters within the story. The presenter role is to motivate questioning by participants and sometimes they do this through commenting on the story as it develops. And we have an example here, and hopefully that it's clear enough for you to hear. If it doesn't, I'll provide you with some.
Okay, I can see what you mean now. Now let me know what's about to happen here with the skipper. Skip! See? It's all good! Yeah.
You can go on your own.
Oh, no, just sit here with you and have some talks tonight. Okay. All right, okay. Hey, why don't you face with me we'll see around here. How do you think she's feeling right now?
I don't know how she's feeling, but she doesn't look too great.
She didn't even look like she wanted to do it in the first place. Do you think Brendan would see that?
Well, he did say he would look after her and...
Let's see if she's feeling looked after.
Oh, I'm feeling pretty dumb, because he didn't use it. Or we didn't use it. Oh, but we were a bit drunk, we were so wasted, and because we were so wasted then... Well, that just sounds really pathetic now, Because what if I'm pregnant?
So I don't know how clearly you could hear, but the facilitators stay inside, the presenters stay inside the performance all the time, and they're able to stop it at any moment and kind of make comments on it. I don't want them to ask the questions and guide people as to how to think, but I want them to make the kinds of comments that other people might make in order to provoke the questioning. Retaining active facilitators means that there's a strong developing level of skill in listening and questioning to support and promote discussion within the work. And alongside being able to do this questioning as a facilitator, when they're in role, they also became very skillful at using the characters to challenge the depth of thinking during the process. Vygotsky talks about an essential feature of learning that creates the zone of proximal development That is, learning awakens a variety of internal developmental processes that are able to operate only when the child is interacting with people in the environment and in cooperation with their peers. Once the processes are internalised, they become part of the child's independent developmental achievement. And I know that sounds really complex. What it means for our active facilitators is you are positioned to watch and listen, not to tell. This is not your story. You are not the person to tell. You are to help, support and guide. So the moment that Vygotsky's talking about is that moment when they bring it to a certain position, and then you know that one question will push the boat out just a little bit further. You say that he's lonely. Can you tell me more about that? What is that loneliness about? He lacks confidence. How do you know that? What do you see that tells you that? So they wait for these strategic moments where they might enter the exchange between participants and characters and challenge through questioning to deepen learning. And of course the other thing they get much better at over time is efficiently managing groups of secondary level students, which isn't always simple or easy. This was also the year that the Cultural Advisory Group, facilitated by Te Pua Waitapu, visited during our rehearsals. Although theatre is a mainstream organisation, we are sensitive to the fact that many of the communities we work in have large Māori or Pacific populations. We thank the Ministry for enabling this advisory group to occur and strengthen our cultural practice. It was also really nice to, even if it was briefly, host these lovely people in Dunedin and appreciate how the process was another step towards developing better relationships with other providers. We still refer to and are trying to utilise the feedback they provided. Some things were simple, others were much harder. So we come to 2014. Our tour this year was completed in June. It saw Sexwise this year as an imaginary app you could download to your phone and become a panellist or an advisor for the day. It provided a complex story of the relationships between characters in a secondary school setting. Real life is complex, and we offer young people the opportunity to work at understanding the complexities, the way issues come about, and the choices one might make to better one's life. It provided the participants with the opportunity to enter discussion and role as a panellist, to tease out the issues that they chose, and it's rather like practising what they might do in a real-world situation. We believe that the things they choose to address are the things that interest them or perceived needs for their lives at the time. We structure a story so that they can pull out of it what is at their developmental level, rather than us trying to make something fit over a huge age range. They take responsibility for what they will investigate about building relationships, and therefore take responsibility for their own learning. Questioning was pivotal to my learning as a child. It was strong and deliberate, driven by engagement and story. Questioning underpins learning. It deepens the experience and drives the experience of learning. Postman, cited by Morgan and Saxton in their lovely book about questioning, says all our knowledge results from questions, which is another way of saying that question asking is our most important intellectual tool. Active facilitators focus on questioning to unwrap issues rather than telling young people what they should do or know. So we're working to get participants talking about sexuality, discussing information, issues, perspectives, ideas and choices. Participants are working to understand the experiences, situations and needs of the characters in the story and consequently give advice to those in the story that need it. We don't have long with any one person, so these guys need to engage the audience very quickly. We don't have a lot of time. Engagement is vital to the work and it must happen quickly. Here's how it starts.
People gather round, come and listen to the news.
Sing it, girl.
If life's treating you hard or giving you the blues, we haven't come around to tell you any lies. We ain't gonna lie to you, child. Go to your new show. We call situations are falling in love and using blue. All those other problems and that should be alright. So there. Jeez. Sexwise. What's up, guys? I'm Jocelyn. Good evening. My name's Adam.
Tunnel forever, my name's Sal.
And together we are your crew of Sexwise for 2014. You're the go-to cards, or can we be friends? Have you changed your friend request? Why don't you just hit accept? Please now. Kia ora. Hey, Muriona. Listen to the younger, listen to the older. We ain't here to tell you guys the face, so keep it real, y'all, and take status updates. We'll start off with meetings and how to say hi, and end up with the sex, the why and why.
Some of this topic may be a friend, so leave a comment, y'all.
Or just hit like. We're armed with knowledge and information. Increasing our relationship to exclamation.
Now, what to do to the end?
What?
It's how for you.
You're the go-to cards, or can we be friends? Have you checked your friend request? Why don't you just hit accept? Please now. Sex.
Heathcote recognised that drama is not stories retold in action. Drama is human beings confronted by situations which change them because of what they must face in dealing with those challenges. So we bring applied theatre alongside sexuality education. Louisa Allen, whom I'm sure everybody here knows, one of her suggestions about educating in sexuality is to be effective, we need to move away from the overly clinical, impersonal and narrowly defined content to engaging young people with relevance to their lived realities. Add to this Burroughs and Sinkinson's argument that teaching in the area should provide opportunities for students to explore what contours their own and others' emotions, beliefs and actions. We begin to read not only a need for change in sexuality education, but a basis to build ideas on for change. And as we all know from earlier on in this conference, Eero has also criticised quite heavily the way things happened in school. We believe that we can contribute to school programs. We aren't the be-all and end-all, but we can contribute to motivating and exciting people to talk about sexuality education. You can't teach sexuality in a lesson or a session. Our young people deserve to approach the subject again and again at an appropriate developmental level and in many ways. So we just see ourselves contributing in a motivating and interesting way to the sexuality education of young people, We're not a complete standalone program, but we do provoke them to talk about it. Gareth.
Evelyn's always a very hard act to follow, and also she's a lovely performer. I was just going to talk about some of the wider facets of our health promotion work. I'm just conscious of time, so I may go through some of this information fairly quickly, but feel free to contact me afterwards if you would like to know more about any of this. So Sexwise is delivered under agreement with the Ministry of Health. We have a program logic model. This is available on our website, so we won't spend too much time looking at it. In addition to developing and implementing an annual plan, we create supportive environments by using an integrated approach that enhances schools' delivery of the New Zealand health curriculum and strengthens strategic alliances through consultation with community stakeholders. Okay, so we are committed to reducing health inequalities and making best use of our resources. Who receives Sexwise? On the left there is just a little graph showing where we toured this year. On the right is the types of educational settings that we work in. Sexwise and you. A feature of our work is that most of it is undertaken outside of our home district, and so that gives us some fairly unique insights into the sexual reproductive health landscape and how that varies across the country. In various districts, different agencies might take the lead. It might be a DHB, PHU, health promoter, family planning, the public health nurses, NGOs, or some sort of combination of all of those. But the important thing is we welcome support through all phases of our annual cycle, including planning, program, delivery and evaluation. So obviously we're quite reliant on networks, and that's why I've put the Pashans logo up there. This shop with 2 Ps, looking forward to the new Uber shop as a way of disseminating information, and of course welcome direct contact with me, and obviously also the local networks, the ships, the poshes and the shags that exist around this country. I also encourage you to make direct contact with me. It's also really pleasing to note an increasing number of clinical service providers who are becoming involved in all stages of Sexwise. We have a small but growing pool of evidence to support our belief that students seek services after receiving the program. A summary of our 2014 program evaluation has been given to SHOP with 2 Ps, and that will be posted on the website in the near future. We've just completed our annual plan process, so we're moving into the next phase, which is programming. So just I've put up here, this is it's no longer draft, it's been confirmed. This is our 2015 delivery. So these are the DHBs that will receive Sexwise next year and the dates that we're visiting. So as of next week, I'll start contacting various sexual and reproductive health providers in these districts to discuss potential settings. And you may recall that Evelyn mentioned there were 2 parts to the program, the theatre and the workshop. So on a practical level, we have a maximum 4 classes per day. It is worth noting that often this represents additional health time for those students, and students are being time pivoted away from other subjects in order to have additional health. We endorse a whole school approach and often achieve this in rural settings. We had 2 large urban schools this year that chose to go for a whole school approach. As Sexwise is suitable for students in years 9 to 13, it is up to the school, and in practice many schools will focus on their junior levels owing to the fact there's less timetabling issues with that. Ideally, settings expressed interest in receiving Sexwise through our website, and we have an online registration facility. And this helps us attain some of the information that we need to make the bookings, and also helps us receive some data about how they intend to use Sexwise to enhance their existing health education program. So I just put up a couple of comments from last year's registration process, just because it's quite interesting. The first comment I'd just like to note actually is not a health teacher. This first comment was made by a school nurse who registered her program to receive her school to receive the program.
There have been some obvious gaps in the teaching of sexual health and life skills, etc. at the school for some time, so I'm currently addressing it. The teachers will benefit alongside the students from listening to such topics being covered to aid their own confidence in teaching it. The school clinic that I work in has scary results of STIs, lack of literacy, understanding around any such health topics. So I believe Sexwise would be a great way of reaching out to these students.
Okay, I think we'll just skip the next two and move on to... so Sexwise is one of the pathways that leads students to the use of clinical services. It would be counterproductive to hit students with a massive list of services, so we holistically sew these into our program through various ways, which I won't detail at the moment, but I'll just sneak into... This is how the theatre session of Sexwise finishes. It's a lovely way to show how we can support the other services that are out there.
Gareth and I have worked together with Sexwise for 4 years now, watching and listening as young people question, discuss and give advice around sexual health. We network with an ever-growing number of other folk in the sexual health field. I feel like there's a whole lot of people in this room that are my friends. I know that it's time we broke through the wall of silence around things sexual. I share with you the whakatauki we use to drive Sexwise. Mā te whakatau ka mōhio, mā te mōhio ka marama, mā te marama ka mātou, mā te mātou ka ora.
By discussion comes understanding, by understanding comes light, by light comes wisdom, by wisdom comes life everlasting.
I believe that when young people often come to having to talk about these things in the contemporary world, it's accompanied, things have gone wrong, and it's accompanied with feelings of guilt, fear, anger, embarrassment and humiliation. I believe if we start to talk with them and alongside them, and I know that the village people are already preparing a pathway, and as we heard last night, so some of us are all on the same page, coming from lots of places. If we start talking with them, the discussions will be filled with excitement, interest, confidence, empathy, fascination and enjoyment, as indeed we have experienced in Sexwise. We want to thank you, Nairi, for your awhi, for the way you gently breathe through the forest, rustling not only the leaves on the floor, but the tops of the trees. We thank you, Alison Green, for making us ask the hard questions and try to answer them. We thank the Sexual Health Society for enabling us to be in front of you here this morning. It is an honour and a privilege. We thank Theta for also helping us to be here, but most of all we thank you for sitting with us and allowing us to share what our part of the forest looks like. I do this work personally so that when my mokopuna who is of Ngāpui descent talks with his children, he's 12 now, he'll do it across the whole period of growing up with much more ease and less embarrassment than his mum did with his father. Thank you very much.